Department of Homeland Security. So in June, the House Judiciary Committee held a series of hearings about this, and they issued a report on how CISA had been weaponized against the American people. And in that report, they wrote that the federal government coordinated with private organizations to police thoughts, ideas, and beliefs. And the report shows how this was like a whole of government coordinated effort. The director of CISA is actually quoted as saying that CISA is in the business of critical infrastructure. And I'm going to quote here exactly. The most critical infrastructure, she says, is our cognitive infrastructure. And that is, it is the job of CISA to build resilience to misinformation and disinformation. So essentially, we have the federal government, thinks that we're too dumb to figure out what's true and what's false, and that we need their help to do this. But I think the most alarming thing, and Representative Kiefer and I have been talking about this and are really concerned about where this is heading, is this narrative about threats to election workers. Every time you turn on the news, if you go to the EAC, everybody is talking about it. Shapiro talks about it. Schmidt talks about it, threats to election workers. But when you drill down on that and you think about, you find out from the DOJ that there have been, since 2020, 13 prosecutions. Florida set up a election crimes bureau, and they had 0 threats to election workers. And what's interesting is that some of the things that are categorized as threats to election workers are mean tweets. Yeah. Now, of course, nobody condones actual threats, but when we look at these mean tweets, I wonder, Representative Kiefer, can you tell us a little bit about your mean tweets that are directed to you and how often the DOJ is investigating that?
And I say that all the time. I said, it being in public service, right, you get a lot of mean emails, a lot of mean calls. If you have thin skin, this is not the job for you for sure. And so what warrants a harassment or a threat? And as I was working on a hearing that we had 2 weeks ago with Secretary Schmidt regarding the SURE system, what I kept finding was this narrative over and over again, threats and harassment to election workers. So I wanted to know what the actual numbers and the data were. And so the national threats assessment task force that they had, they reached out to all the election offices and they said, give us any threats or harassments that your election offices have received. So they received thousands, they said thousands, but they prosecuted just 13 in the entire country, 13. And as I was reading articles, the reputable media outlet, The Guardian, they've done numerous articles, and the issue was not that it wasn't real, it's that the bar is too high. The bar is too high for threats and harassment because we have this pesky thing called the Constitution and free speech. And so it isn't that it's not real, we just can't prosecute it because it's not to that level, which is just the irony of it, because isn't that the same thing they say about the elections, right? We're all election deniers because there have been no prosecuted case. They've all been thrown out, right? But the bar's not too high for that, even though we can document, and we've cited case after case of all the illegal actions that took place during the elections. But there's nothing to see here. But this is a crisis. And my frustration that I was sharing with you is that this is all fabricated, and what they're going to do is use this to gin up the base. So it's the same thing they did during COVID with all the election workers when we started losing election workers, right? COVID's coming, you're gonna die. You're over 65, you're definitely gonna die. And knowing that COVID's gonna be at the precincts and that you're gonna die, are you still willing to work at your precinct, right? Well, this is the same thing here, right? All of these threats and assessments, it's based on feelings. It's not even based on actual things that happened, it's feelings. So the highly partisan Brennan Center, they issued their own paper and their pseudo study that 4 out of 5 election workers fear for the safety of their, or election directors fear for the safety of their election workers. It's their feelings. Again, I feel a lot of things, right? Does that warrant action? But this is being perpetuated. If you just do a quick Google, you'll see it. There's article after article, and I fear that what they're going to say is, my issue is that it suppresses the vote. So they're suppressing in-person voting, number one. And number two, they're doing this through getting election workers not to work for fear, right, that they're going to be harassed or threatened because they keep telling them that this is happening, whether it is or not. This is happening. You should be really scared. Are you sure you want to work? And we're going to start seeing a consolidation of our polls, and we're going to start seeing a shrinking of opportunities to actually go vote in person.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very serious concern. I think that all of this narrative that they've been pushing for so long is intended to cause fear. And they've been successful, right? Because as Representative Kiefer pointed out, the Brennan Center did this survey. But what was interesting is they all said that they were concerned, that they were fearful of threats. But when asked if they had been threatened, they had not. So why are they afraid?